It was then that I realized I was looking at him with no nerve at all as he started coughing. "Are you all right?" I asked. He made a sign with his hand that I didn't know how to interpret. I didn't know if it was an affirmation to my question or just asking me to move away. Maybe both. I puffed out my right cheek a little uncomfortably and picked up my backpack. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. But I was entranced by his voice, soft and a little husky. I looked at him and his face was expressionless, empty and neutral. It gave little shivers the seriousness he possessed. "I just wanted to pass the time," I said indifferently and shrugged my shoulders. And I think it was the stupidest thing I'd ever said in my entire life. "Aren't you supposed to be in class?" he attacked with a raised eyebrow. "Aren't you supposed to be in class too?" I countered. The unknown boy cocked his head to one side and smiled sideways. "Aren't you supposed to be in class this time? Did they not let you into class this time, Hasley? Or are you starting the year off on the wrong foot?" "What? How did he know my name?" Everything stopped and I quickly furrowed my brow to look at him quizzically at his question. "How do you know my name?" "We shared a class together," he replied, rolling his eyes indifferently. "Besides, most people know you. Being best friends with the great Zevngwin raises your status." "What class?" I asked. "History, with Professor Kearney." The boy averted his eyes to his feet and stood like that for a few seconds, reached into his pants pocket and pulled out a rolled-up white paper. Unperturbed by my presence, he lit that roll and held it to his lips shamelessly. That way, I completely forgot what we were talking about. I was dumb, but not too dumb. "That wasn't just a cigarette." "What is it?" With some curiosity, I dared to ask. "I don't think it's tobacco." He gave a cynical chuckle and before speaking took a puff. "Joint." He was amused. The smoke left his lips and drifted up to my face. The smell was a little strong and different from nicotine. I didn't know it was a joint. I grimaced and pulled away a little. "Why do you do it in high school?" I was worried. If I was seen with him, we'd both be in detention or, worse, jail. However, I was reassured to note that everyone was in class and hardly anyone was coming this way. The camps were hell for many. "Because I want to and I can," he answered rudely. "That's disgusting. You're always up late, aren't you?" he muttered with a chuckle. "I'm not good at waking up," I confessed, tapping the metal bleacher with my foot. "I noticed," he admitted, looking at the roll between his fingers. He slung his backpack over his shoulder and strided 2 at a time down the bleachers. Where was he going? "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to follow him. He turned around to face me. "I'm leaving." "Isn't it obvious?" "Why?" I asked almost in a shout. "Classes go on, Weigel," he said solemnly, turned and walked on. He had called me by my last name. How did he know that? "He's with you in a class," my subconscious shouted. I realized that he hadn't mentioned anything about him to me. He didn't even introduce himself, so I spoke again. "You didn't tell me your name," I shouted, putting both hands around my mouth, creating a megaphone with them. He turned around, but didn't stop. He kept walking backwards and only raised his thumbs and then turned around again. His way of walking was different. He walked as if nothing was bothering him. His back relaxed and his legs fitted into those slightly tight black pants. I plopped down on one of the bleachers and my gaze was lost across the greenish field, repeating to myself again how much I hated Professor Hoffman. Recess time came. I didn't like eating in the cafeteria. Ever since I was little I couldn't tolerate the smell of food and the whispering of several people at the same time. I only did it for Zev. I enjoyed joining him and being part of his space during breakfast. I pushed the door of the cafeteria with the tip of my tennis shoes and walked straight to the juice machine. I rummaged for a few coins to deposit and then grabbed my grape juice through the bottom hole. My body tensed as I felt arms catch me in the back, applying pressure, though I instantly relaxed when I heard Zev's familiar loud laugh. I stirred from between his arms and once he released me, I turned to him with a smile. "Hey," I waved, ruffling his hair. "Don't do that, I'm serious, Hasley," he chided me with a laugh. "Let me breathe," I laughed. We started walking to one of the tables in the center where some of her teammates were, and the moment they saw us, they gave us both a smile. "Are you going to my training today?" asked Zev. One thing I loved about him was his hazel eyes, a very pretty color. A great advantage, because when he asked you for a favor it was impossible for you to refuse. "Sure," I replied with a nod. He grinned from ear to ear. "How could I miss?" "Not going," Nizan joked. "Oops, funny," I laughed. The boy didn't say anything, just stuck his tongue out at me like any mature person would. "Oh, he sure did. Shall I pick you up?" Zev picked up the conversation. I knew that even if I refused, he would go anyway. The high school had several teams in different sports and mostly football, basketball and volleyball were going to state. Matt was the captain of the basketball team and the guy I had liked for the past 2 years or so. Zev was always picking on him. They would cross words when they were called out for the simple fact that they were the captains of the top teams in the high school. Matthew Jones was a tall, reddish-haired boy with green eyes and a very fair complexion. Zev said he looked like Casper, the ghost. In the blink of an eye, everyone at the table was looking at me with an arched eyebrow, causing me to gain a reddish color in my cheeks. This happened a lot. I played with my lips one more time before speaking. "I'm going to buy something to eat," I warned, wanting to evade the situation. I stood up and Nizan instantly copied my action, adding, "I'll walk with you." I nodded and we walked away from the group. The boy warned me that he was going to the other end of the cafeteria and disappeared from my sight. I looked at the food in front of me for something appetizing, but nothing was to my taste. After a few minutes of trying to get something to crave, I decided to order a piece of pizza and root. "That's disgusting," I heard Luke say behind me. I turned around, running into the blonde guy from earlier today with whom I had a pleasant conversation in the bleachers. "What?" I asked, confused at his statement. "That drink," he replied, making a slight movement. "It was my favorite drink. It's root and it tastes good," I defended myself with a frown. "It tastes like medicine." He wrinkled his nose. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I'm here to buy food," he mentioned with a playful grin, squinting his eyes and making me feel imbecilic. That's what most normal people do when they come to the cafeteria. I wanted to defend myself when the cafeteria doors opened, revealing the redhead. Next to him came some of his friends from the basketball team. He looked too beautiful. His smile shone on his face as his eyes glazed over. "Do you want a wipe?" The blonde's voice made me snap out of my orbit and look away from Matthew and back at him. "You almost flooded the cafeteria with your drool," he remarked jocularly. Felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and wanted to hide them. He laughed and gently pushed me by my shoulder to order an orange juice. I didn't understand why my feet wouldn't move and thus get out of there. However, when it dawned on me, his voice came again. "Do you like the basketball captain?" he asked, coming to the front again. And continued, "Better not answer, it's too obvious," he laughed. "Why haven't you tried to approach him?" It's useless, I spoke, without much desire to continue this conversation. As I turned around, I could see the silhouette of someone. For a second, the thought crossed my mind that it might be Zev. I was wrong, it wasn't him. Matthew was walking down the hallway in his tight blue pants and black and white shirt. His gaze flicked to mine and I was about to faint. He winked one of his green eyes and smiled at me, and then kept walking. Oh my God, oh my God. The blood rushed up to my cheeks and I bit my lips to keep from letting out a cry of joy. I stuck my head in my locker and laughed. He was completely gorgeous, head to toe. Also my crush for a while now. Just seeing him from afar made butterflies flutter in my stomach, my cheeks turn red and my face burn at my thoughts.